Hi friends, this is Caitlin and today I'm sharing a really fun Halloween card that was actually inspired by a Christmas card I made using the My Favorite Things Polaroid frame die. I also just got my hands on the Doodlebug Happy Haunting paper pack, and those little pumpkins were so adorable I knew I really wanted to feature them in a card, and this seemed like a perfect fit. I trimmed down my main pumpkin panel to 4 inches by 5 1/4, so I would have a little bit of a white frame around my edges. And then you'll see I'm grabbing a stitched frame to cut out that black and white pinstripe, but I'm also grabbing a frame that's just a tiny bit smaller so that I can cut out the center part of my pumpkins and use that piece for some other card later down the road so that I'm not wasting this adorable pattern paper by hiding it under another pattern paper that no one will ever see. I don't always do this, but if it's a pattern that I really love or I know I'm probably not going to be able to get my hands on again, I do like doing this just to kind of preserve what I have and be able to make even more crafts out of what I've purchased. So you can see at this point I've basically made myself a frame out of that pumpkin paper, and I'm going to place my black panel on top, and once that's all glued down you'll never know the difference, and I basically get an extra bonus panel out of it. So it's a really great trick if you haven't tried that before. Now I'm going in to stamp a sentiment on the inside of my card using the Itty Bitty Halloween stamps from My Favorite Things and the new Villainous Potion Oxide ink. I really love stamping with the oxides. I don't have very many of them, but stamping for sentiments works so beautifully, and I just thought it would be a fun pop of color instead of just a plain black without being too over the top. So now I'm going to go back onto the front and I'm going to glue down my little pumpkin frame first. And because I'm gluing everything flat, this one you really couldn't see any texture, but in the past when I've cut out the inside of my pattern paper, if it's really thin paper, sometimes you can see the edge, and my solve for that is usually just adding a little bit of foam tape to whatever that center panel is, but this time I didn't feel that it needed it. So now that I have those panels ready to go, I am going to start working on the scene that's going to go inside my little Polaroid picture. So for the scene, I decided to Copic color in these adorable little stamp from Stamping Bella. It's called Pumpkins with a Witchy on top, and I absolutely love this little witch and her little kitten friend, and their adorable pumpkins. One thing to note if you haven't used Stamping Bella stamps before is they are made out of blue rubber, which is nice because it gives you so much extra detail. But you do have to use it a little bit differently in your MISTI. So back when I was stamping it on my stamping platform, I had taken out that foam insert and my little laminated sheet, and that's because these already have that cling foam on the back of them, so you don't need that extra layer. But if you have a MISTI or even just a regular like stamping block, then you use them just like normal as far as sticking them on and stamping them down. You just don't need that little bit of foam insert in your MISTI when you do it. And while I'm coloring these, I'm using my same normal go-to pumpkin color scheme, but as always, all of my color choices, as well as any of the other products I'm using today, will all be listed in the description box below for you. Sometimes it's just too many colors and too much back and forth for me to try to narrate all of the coloring, or it would get so overwhelming. I really wanted to make her dress a fun, like purpley maroon kind of color, and I kind of regret using this RV66, not because it's not a great color, but because apparently my marker is a little dry, and this is one that I don't have a refill for yet. So it was a little bit tricky to blend. I ended up going over this 2 times so that I could get as good of a blend as possible, which is always a good idea. If you feel like your blend isn't where you want it to be, try doing a second layer, because I've never done a second layer and regretted it. I really think that Stamping Bella stamps are great, especially if you're trying out a new coloring medium or even trying out new color combinations, because their designs are so clean and simple, and I definitely mean that in the best way possible, that you can really focus on your blending and pay attention to your coloring instead of having to worry about teeny tiny little details or things like that. You can really let the colors kind of speak for themselves or add details where you want them to be, which I think is really a fun and unique way to customize your design. So I decided to give my witch a purple dress and a black hat, and then when it was time to color in my cat, I was stuck because I didn't want him to be a black cat with a black hat. So I decided to switch it up and give him a purple hat, even though I knew those markers weren't the best. But I just thought that the color wise, it would be a really cute color story and would kind of tie in everything together. And I definitely tried to keep my pumpkins a little more on the darker side, focusing more on that EO9, so that it would look right next to the pumpkin pattern paper that we'll be using for that backer panel. I don't know about you, but I absolutely cannot believe that it's almost Halloween. I feel like I blinked and it went from August straight through to right now. There was no September and October in my mind, even though I know there was, and there's a whole series that I made that goes with that. It just flew by so fast, and I can't believe we're already here. I'm so excited for this weekend. My kids and I and my husband were doing a trunk or treat tomorrow and then trick or treat on Sunday. And I'm so excited because they get so excited and they're so excited to dress up and do their costumes and of course get tons of candy and sugar. But I'm also really curious to know if you guys are dressing up. What are your traditions? I know that not everyone celebrates Halloween. So do you have any other spooky traditions or fall traditions that you're doing? If you are dressing up or your kids are dressing up, I'd love to know what they're going to be for Halloween. So definitely leave me some comments down below. I'm super curious to know if other people go all out or if, I'm a lone weirdo over here. I decided to stick with some really pretty warm browns for my little witch's hair. And that way it would kind of tie in with the pumpkins without her hair being like orange, just so that everything kind of had that same warm tone throughout. And then I'm going to give them a little background scene around them. In my original Christmas one, I just went in with a neutral light blue for the entire background, but that was more because the characters in that scene were so close together that there really wasn't any point to have any detail. With this one, because the cat and the witch have a little space between them and definitely space on either side, I wanted to give them a little ground, and I ended up going kind of overboard and adding in trees and things like that. But first I laid down that Polaroid die and I traced it with a pencil just so I didn't spend too much time coloring outside of the lines, even though you'll see when this is all over. I definitely did color way too much. All of this stuff is going to be cut out. But it's better to over color and get extra practice, right? That's a thing that works. So now you can see I'm going in with my browns and just laying in the shadow parts of my tree trunks, laying in a couple all the way across, and this one all the way to the right is 100% going to be cut out at the end. So you'll see I went back in with some lighter markers later on to add farther distance trees, more to the middle, just to kind of add in some more because that one does get pretty much cut off. So I really like adding in trees this way, going in with my darkest to lightest and just picking one side to be a highlight and one side to be a shadow. I find that it makes it really simple. It's easy to add branches if you want to this, which I will also do towards the end. And it's a nice way to kind of get a little bit of a tree texture or a hint of it without having to go super overboard on detail. Because with a scene like this, I really want the cat and the witch to be the focus. So they should have the most detail and everything else in the back can kind of just fade away a little bit. You want it to still hold up against them, but they definitely don't need, I felt anyway, did not need full wood grain, bark, and individual leaves and tiny branches and all of that detail, especially when, half of it's going to get cut off anyway. So this is me holding my Polaroid die back up and realizing that that right hand tree is going to be completely gone. So I added in some more very simple trees on that background just to kind of fill up the space that was going to be visible. I didn't go overboard. Like I said, I didn't do crazy tiny branches. I just kind of wanted to give the suggestion of the fall and some naked trees, like the leaves are already gone. But you could keep this as simple or as detailed as you like, or honestly, you could definitely just get away with the plain blue background, and maybe I just overthought the whole thing. So then I trimmed this out using scissors and I went around my outline, and then you'll see I hold it up to the back of my die just to make sure that when I go to glue this down, you can't see any of that seam scene, from under the die. I also cut out a really cute little banner that's a folding banner from My Favorite Things. And my favorite thing to do with this is to color that little bit of white that peeks out on the folds, a coordinating color to go with my card. I think it just helps to break up all the white, and it's a really cute little sweet touch without being overboard. So I flipped that banner upside down, and I'm using it to lay out my sentiment so that it goes with that curved look of the banner. That's my favorite way to do banners and sentiments like that, is to flip it over and line it up using an acrylic block. And now I'm trimming down my foam tape into thirds so that it's thin enough to fit around that Polaroid frame. I do love the idea of having this popped up a little bit. You could absolutely also make this into a shaker card, maybe do a second layer of foam and add some little shakies in there, but I just wanted to do one and let the scene kind of still stand out. So now I'm gluing down my scene to my foam on the back and adding some liquid glue to the back of the scene so that everything kind of goes down at once. And using that liquid glue means that I can zhuzh my picture to where I need it to be with the banner. And the same thing, I use liquid glue for my banner so I can kind of push things around and get everything lined up how I want it. And that brings us to the end of this project. I am so grateful that you came to hang out with me today, and I want to say a special hello to all of my new subscribers that came over from Jess's channel. You have no idea how much you being here means to me. I hope you all have a great Halloween, a great weekend, and happy crafting.